Welcome to the online lectures for software engineering. In today's class, we'll be discussing architectural styles. Now, what is an architectural style? Now, this architectural style, each style describes a system category that encompasses that it's any system that has got any of those categories that is going to be called as an architectural style. The first one is a set of components that perform a function required by a system. Now, what can be this set of components? These set of components, it can be a database or a module, a part of the system. It can be a database or a module. So this set of components that are going to perform a particular functionality, that is the job of the database. It is going to add data, it is going to store the data. If you're making any changes, it's going to make all those changes within the database. So each and every component is performing its task that is required by the system. Then second point is a set of connectors that enable communication. Connectors means if suppose you've got one component and this is the other component. This is component one, this is component two. How are these two components connected? That is called as your connector. So this set of connectors are going to enable communication. That is how they are going to communicate. How component one is going to communicate to component 2. Why this can be done either by using message passing also. That is by sending a message, you can communicate between the two components. Now this is also used for coordination and cooperation among components. So these are the connectors. So that is also one architectural style definition. The next one is constraints that define how components can be integrated to form the system. Now, what are constraints? Constraints are basically your limitations. Whenever you're designing a system, you've got some specific limitations that need to be followed. So limitations are going to define how each and every component can be integrated. If suppose you're designing one specific component, there is a constraint that you are going to use some specific technology for the specific component. So based upon that technology of that particular component, you're going to identify what software need to be needed to design that component, and then how you're going to make the connection, how you're going to integrate it within the software. That is also one point. Then the next one is the semantic model that enable a designer to understand the overall properties of a system. Now you're going to have a system. That system is going to tell you the overall properties are like you're making a prototype. Within a prototype, what do you do? Within a prototype, you make a system that is going to be similar to your end system. That is how your system is going to look like how the system is going to look like when it is completely developed. Here you're going to make use of similar components and design the system and see how it is looking, how it is going to work, what are the aesthetics, how is the user interface. So this all is going to be identified how? By analyzing the known properties. That is, what are the properties of each and every component and what are the different parts. When you know these two things, you can get to know what is the overall property of that entire system. So we can sum this up in one point. What is an architectural style? In architectural style, it is basically a transformation that is imposed on the design of an entire system. So this is your architectural style transformation that is imposed on the design of the entire system. That is, within the entire system design, you're going to have different components. Within this entire system, you're going to have different connectors that are connected. You're going to have some constraints for each and every component. Then you're also going to have different properties and the different parts. So you're imposing the transformation on this entire system. This is called as your architectural style. Now coming up to the brief taxonomy of architectural styles, that is, you're going to study different patterns in here, or you can say the different types of architectural styles that are used. The first one is called as the data-centered architecture. As the name says, that data is placed at the center within the architecture. Here you can see that data, this is your database. This database, it can be either a repository or a blackboard. Now what is the example of a data store? Now this data store, it can either be a file or it can be a database. Now this file or database, this is going to reside at the center of the architecture, and you can see that all the different client softwares, these are going to access this database frequently. Now what are the different jobs that each and every client software can perform? It can add items, it can delete items, or modify the data within this data store. So there's the first part. Now a variation of this approach, that is called as your blackboard approach. Now within this blackboard approach, what is going to happen, that here this blackboard, this is going to send notifications to the different client software whenever there is change within the data. As I told, this client software, it can add, delete and modify the data. So whenever there is any addition, whenever there is deletion, or whenever there is any modification of data, you are going to receive a notification that this so and so data is being changed by a specific user. Or you can say that if suppose this a specific client, he's interested in one specific part of file, he might be interested in specific file C. Whenever, now as he's interested in file C, when if suppose another client, he is making changes within this C, so he's going to get a notification that the contents of file C are being changed. Now this architecture, this blackboard architecture, it is going to promote integrability, that is each and every existing component, it can be changed or it can be modified by any other new client component without actually having any concern of the other client. That is, you're not going to see that this particular client is not going to see that this specific client software is interested in file C, so I'm not going to make any changes within C. That is not going to be the case, because here each and every client component, these are going to operate independently. So this is your data center architecture. If you just remember the diagram, you can write down the points. The next one is your data flow architecture. Now this data flow architecture, this architecture is applied when you've got some input data, and this input data needs to be transformed into output data, or some computational, or so we can say that suppose any computation need to be performed, then you go for data flow architecture. Now within this data flow architecture, you've got two components. What are those two components? The two components are your filters and you have got pipes. The two components, filters and pipes. Now coming on to the first, what are filters and what are pipes? Now a pipe is going to transmit data from one component to another. That is, if you can see, it is just taking data, fetching data from filter 1 and giving data to filter 2. Its job is just to transmit the data. Pipes are going to transmit data. Whereas filters, each and every filter is going to work independently of the other filters, whether you're going upstream or downstream. It is going to work independently. Now, these filters are responsible for making any computations within the data. If suppose you need to make a computation A plus B is going to be added in that specific output is going to be given to the another filter. That is the definition, as you need some input and that needs to be transformed to output. That is the job of your filter. Now these filters, they do not require any knowledge or any what working is being done by the neighbor filter. They are not going to know that. They do not require any knowledge whether it is doing A plus B, A minus B, whatever computation is done, it is none of their concern. They're just going to do the job that is assigned to that particular filter. Now this is the job of your data flow architecture. Two important components are there, filters and pipes. Filters are just going to perform computations and transform, and they do not require any knowledge of the other filters, whereas pipes are just going to transmit this data. Now within this architecture, you can see that the input was given via one filter and the output is two filters. Now if suppose there is another filter added here, suppose this is a filter, and at the end you get If you say that this data flow is degenerated into one single line of transform, this will be called as batch sequential component. So this is your data flow architecture. The next one is call and return architecture. Now this call and return architecture, this type of architecture style is going to give you a program structure that is very easy to modify and very easy to scale. Now within this call and return architecture, you've got two types of call and return architecture. The first one is main program, subprogram architecture. Now what happens within a main program, subprogram architecture? If suppose you've got a main program and that main program invokes another program or a set of other programs that are going to invoke other program, that is called as your main program subprogram architecture. Now within this diagram we can see you've got first main program. Now this main program, it has got a controller subprogram, that is it is invoking another program, that is your control subprogram. Now this controller subprogram, it is again going to invoke another application subprogram. That is, in order to complete a task, you're invoking some another program, a set of another component, that is called as your main program subprogram architecture. You've got main program, you've got controller subprogram, application subprogram, then you've got another application subprograms. This is your main program subprogram. Coming on to the definition, I'll just read it out. A classic program structure decomposes functions into a control hierarchy. Now this is your control hierarchy, that is, this is the first program that is calling this second program. This second program, in order to complete the task, it is calling the third program, and then it in turn can be calling the fourth program. It invokes a number of program components that in turn may invoke still other components. That is, in a hierarchy they can invoke another components in order to complete the task. The next one is the remote procedure call architecture. Now within this remote procedure call, the components of the main program subprogram architecture, these are distributed across multiple computers on a network. Now within a main program subprogram architecture, what is being done to complete one specific task, one specific computer, it is invoking a number of programs to complete the task. This is the job of one program, or one system is carrying out this task. Whereas in remote procedure call, this entire thing, it is distributed across multiple computers on a network. This becomes like a database, and the computers can access the data. Who requires this functionality, they can access this data. This was your remote procedure call architecture. Then the next one is the object-oriented architecture. Now within this object-oriented architecture, the components of system are encapsulated. Now within an object-oriented, you know that things are encapsulated. So what happens in an object-oriented architecture? In an object-oriented architecture, it is going to encapsulate the data and the operations that must be applied to manipulate the data. That is, whenever you require a task to be completed, you've got some specific data and what operations need to be performed. These are going to be encapsulated within object-oriented architecture. Now, as this data is being encapsulated, the communication and the coordination of data, or you can say the coordination between the different components, this is done by message passing. I've already discussed what is message passing. Within message passing, if suppose there is a component 1 and then there is the component 2. Now whenever this component 1 and component 2 wants to communicate, one is going to send a message to the component 2. When the component 2 receives this message, the second component gets to know what tasks need to be done. The same thing can be done by the other component also. This is your message passing technique. The last one is the layered architecture. So this layered architecture, as the name says, layered architecture, there are going to be different multiple layers within this layered architecture. Now within this layered architecture, a number of different layers are defined, and these layers, and the job of these layers is to perform some specific operations by each and every layer. As you come closer, this at the end you're going to come closer to the machine instruction set. So at the end, that is the outer layer, you're going to have the user interface layer. So this user interface layer is going to have different components. Now this user interface layer, it is going to tell you what are the aesthetics of the system, how the components are arranged. Each and everything is going to be there at the user interface layer. So this is your outer layer. At the inner layer, you're going to have the application layer and the utility layer. So within this application and the utility layer, coming first to the utility layer, now what happens is that you're going to have several modules within a system. You're going to have different n number of modules within the system. Now within these different modules, you're going to have different data types also. Now some of these data types are common to other packages that are there within the system. So these becomes your, so these data types, they become your shared data types. Now these data types, these shared data types, they are important for running the different interfaces that are linked to the different packages. So all of the shared different packages, this is going to constitute of this utility layer. That is, this is your utility layer. All the different data types that are used to within the different packages, that is your utility layer. And the application layer, this application layer is going to make use of the utility layer, that is your different applications. This user, by making use of that user interface, by if you click on a specific button, your application is going to change. That is what options are being displayed. These are your application layer. Now when you run this application layer, you're going to have different data types that are shared among the different packages. That is going to constitute of your utility layer. The inner layer, this is your core layer. Now this core layer, it is going to perform operating system interfacing. Operating system interfacing. That is, all the OS tasks are going to be done at the core layer. Memory allocation, memory deallocation. This is done at the at the OS interfacing layer. Now now as we have studied the different architectures styles that are there, now within this architecture styles, most often what happens is that more than one style can be used to represent a specific design. You're not just going to select the layered architecture, or you're just not going to select the call and return architecture. You are more going to use more than one style that is going to be appropriate, and that is going to fully represent all the functionalities of your layers. You can use more than one style, or you can also make use of different designs so that you can get to know what are the different alternatives. So with this, we finished the architectural styles topic.